While most Americans are losing sleep over mortgage payments, there are real neighborhoods in real American cities where you can buy a house for less than a used Tesla. And I'm not talking about foreclosure nightmares or houses that are literally falling apart. I'm talking about actual neighborhoods with community centers, parks, and people who've decided to stay and build something. But here's the thing, affordability doesn't exist in a vacuum. There is a reason why these homes. Sometimes it's an opportunity. Other times, it's the painful realities bedeviling these cities. However, I've dug through real estate data, cost of living breakdowns, and community insights to find 15 cities where you can actually own property without losing your soul. And by the time we get to our number one city, I will show you a town where you can buy a house for just below $30,000. Let's dive in. Number 15, Dayton, Ohio. Dayton is where the Wright brothers figured out how to fly, which is funny because the city's been trying to figure out how to get back off the ground ever since. But before you laugh at my silly joke, did you know that the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force is legitimately incredible? I'm talking about the kind of place that makes you forget you're in a struggling Rust Belt city for a few hours. You've also got the Dayton Art Institute and Schuster Center hosting actual concerts and theater productions. For a city with a median home price of $133,000, that's actually not bad. The craft beer scene is also solid. The community actually shows up to neighborhood events. And if you get bored, Cincinnati and Columbus are both close enough for weekend trips to watch FC Cincinnati and Columbus Crew play soccer. However, Dayton's been hit hard by industrial decline. Poverty and crime rates are significantly above the national average. Winters are brutal. We're talking seasonal depression that the valley geography seems to trap and recycle. The job market is thin, which is why a lot of people are leaving. But if you're buying here, you're probably not counting on local employment. You're probably remote or retired, or counting on that low cost of living to buy you breathing room. In that context, Dayton starts to make sense. Cost of living? Around $2,400 monthly, so that $133,000 home is actually affordable to maintain. From one historic city to another, our next city trades the aviation legacy for civil rights history that shaped the nation. Number 14, Albany, Georgia. Albany has roots that run deep. The Edmund Pettus Bridges' spiritual cousin in the Albany Civil Rights Institute, Ray Charles Plaza. There's genuine history here and genuine community pride. The Flint River runs through it, and if you're into fishing or kayaking, Radium Springs Gardens is one of Georgia's 7 natural wonders. That's the kind of thing most people don't know exists. The outdoor recreation is legitimately underrated. There are annual festivals, local golf courses, and the Thronatiska Heritage Center for your kids. You're close enough to Atlanta for day trips, and the food scene here has that authentic Southern soul food thing going on. Now, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Some areas in Albany have some of the highest violent crime rates in the country. We're talking about a 1 in 8 chance of violent victimization. That's the kind of statistic that changes whether you feel safe taking an evening walk. The poverty rate is bad. Unemployment is high. There's gang activity, especially after dark. The community is fractured from decades of white flight and historical segregation. That's a demographic reality that you need to understand if you're considering moving here. Still, the affordable housing is real, with a median home price of just $125,000. However, you're buying into a city that's genuinely struggling, and one that comes with real consequences. But if you want a smaller, less complicated, and affordable place to buy a home, our next city might just do the trick. Number 13, Bay City, Michigan. Bay City is a mid-sized town that actually feels like a community, assuming you don't mind trading Southern history for Great Lakes charm. The Bay City Fireworks Festival gets people out. Summer concerts in the park are a regular occurrence. They literally have line dancing at the library, and somehow that's charming. The Saginaw River runs through it with parks and trails. There are beaches nearby. You get that suburban feel with the ability to drive to bigger cities when you want actual variety. The cost of living sits around $2,300 monthly, so that $122,000 purchase price is genuinely sustainable. However, you need to know that this is a post-industrial town. The job market isn't robust. Most people who work here commute elsewhere. The crime rate is 10% higher than average, though property crime is lower. Winters are harsh, Michigan winters, which means either you love winter or you're budgeting for a Florida escape every January. There's a sense of stagnation here. The promise of the industrial era is gone, and the community is figuring out what comes next. It's not dangerous in an active way. It's more like a slow decline with pockets of genuine community resilience. If you're looking for affordable and you don't mind a quieter pace, Bay City delivers. Just know what you're getting. But if you're trading small-town charm for something with actual teeth, our next city fits the bill. Number 12. Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland has something most affordable cities don't: a real culture. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is actually world-class. The Cleveland Museum of Art has free admission. Playhouse Square brings Broadway-level theater. The sports community here is passionate. Browns fans, Cavaliers fans, they all show up. The food scene is genuinely diverse. Little Italy, Ohio City. You can get pierogies, craft beer, and global cuisine. That actually tastes like it came from somewhere real. And you're an outdoor person, Lake Erie is right there for beaches and trails. The Metropark system is honestly beautiful. There's community pride here. People actually care about making this work. However, the challenges are also real. High crime in certain neighborhoods, well above Ohio's average, with concerns about drug use, theft, domestic violence, and traffic-related incidents causing harm to residents. Lake effect snow also hits hard. We're talking 63 inches annually. That means brutal winters and infrastructure strain. The economic deindustrialization has carved deep scars, but Cleveland is also genuinely trying. It's not on the list of cities pretending everything is fine. It's a city actively acknowledging its struggles and investing in culture, revitalization, and community. That $113,000 median home price now looks ridiculous because it gets you actual access to urban amenities most affordable cities don't have. But now, we have to jump west, and things get quieter again, but not in a good way. Number 11. Decatur, Illinois. The most obvious landmark here is Lake Decatur. You get waterfront living at an affordable price point, boating, fishing, and actual parks that are maintained. The community has strong programs for housing assistance and education support. There's a genuine small-town vibe with proximity to actual shopping and restaurants. Millikan University brings theater and concerts. You're close enough to bigger cities for real entertainment when you need it. Agricultural roots mean you can casually stroll to a farmer's market and get fresh produce. But if we're being brutally honest, Decatur is struggling with instances of theft, vandalism, and occasional gunshots. It's no surprise that the schools aren't thriving while the infrastructure is aging and run down. Youth activities are limited, which means young people aren't sticking around. The $105,000 median home price reflects a city in distress. But if you're buying here, you're probably not expecting a booming job market. You're probably looking at low cost of living, small-town access to amenities, and the hope that investment in the community, including your presence, might help shift something. But even with so much to offer, Decatur couldn't break into our top 10, because we're crossing into prices that make you pause, and in the end, I will show you a city where you can buy a house for just $29,000. However, before we get to those, we have to see the birthplace of the Jackson 5. Number 10. Gary, Indiana. Gary is just 25 miles from Chicago. Let that sink in. You can buy a home here for just $83,000 and still have access to world-class museums, major league sports, world-class restaurants, All the things that make Chicago amazing. You're also close to Lake Michigan beaches and Indiana Dunes National Park. Real outdoor recreation. The Jackson 5 were born here, which means there's genuine music history and cultural heritage. The population is incredibly diverse, and the community is trying to revitalize. The truth is, Gary's economy collapsed when the steel mills closed. Thousands of jobs, entire neighborhoods built around those jobs, disappearing in a generation. The crime rate is among the highest in the nation. There are abandoned buildings everywhere with very real safety concerns. But if you can live with that, property in Gary goes for less than a down payment in most American cities. If you work remotely, if you're retired, if you're willing to invest in a community that's genuinely struggling, you get urban access at rural prices. That's not a scam. That's just what happens when a city loses its economic foundation. And just like Gary, our next city is trying to build its way back from the ashes. Number 9. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit is the birthplace of Motown and techno. The Detroit Jazz Fest is real, the music scene is real, and the food scene has evolved from Coney Island hot dogs to Michelin-starred restaurants. You can also go to Lions, Tigers, Pistons, and Red Wings games all in one city. The Motown Museum, the murals, the street art. There's this resilient community spirit, people who stayed, people who came back, people building something deliberately in the rubble, which is why it feels like a scam that homes sell for $78,000 on average. And yes, there are serious challenges. Crime in certain areas is above national averages. Winters are brutal, and there are infrastructure issues. On top of that, taxes are high, which offsets some of the affordability. But Detroit is also experiencing genuine revitalization. Not the kind that pushes people out, the kind where communities are actively building. Artists are moving here, entrepreneurs are here, and people with money have moved here deliberately, not by accident. That $78,000 home? You're buying at the bottom of something that's actually moving upward. But now, we're heading south, deeper into the country, to a place where the main thing on offer is one of the best fishing scenes in America. Number 8. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Pine Bluff is literally called the bass capital of the world. If you fish, this is a pilgrimage site. World-class fishing on the Arkansas River, lakes everywhere. You're also 40 minutes from Little Rock if you want urban amenities. There are community colleges, local events, and golf courses. The food scene has authentic Southern soul food. Agricultural roots mean fresh produce. The cost of living is brutally low. We're talking under $2,100 monthly. In the same way, the crime is outrageous. We're talking about a 1 in 57 chance of violent victimization. There's significant gang activity, events get disrupted by violence, and youth activities are limited because of safety concerns. Pine Bluff is the kind of place where homes are being sold for $71,000 because the community is actively struggling, not because it's a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. Heading deeper into the South, we have to see a city that literally changed the course of America. Number 7. Selma, Alabama. Selma is where the civil rights movement happened. The Edmund Pettus Bridge, where the Bridge Crossing Jubilee Festival is held every year. That's a community memory that shapes who lives here and why. The Alabama River runs through here, giving it small-town charm with historic districts. You're also just 1 hour from Montgomery for state capitol events. The riverfront is beautiful, parks exist, there's a volunteer infrastructure. People actually organize around making the community better. Southern hospitality is real here. The sense of historical pride and unity is real. And then there's the crime. Selma is ranked as Alabama's most dangerous city. Poverty is high, unemployment is high, and the infrastructure is poor. That $69,000 median home price reflects a city in genuine crisis. If you're considering moving here, you need to understand that you're not buying into a revival story yet. You're buying into a community actively struggling with violence, poverty, and population loss. But no list of cheap American towns will be complete without our next city. Number 6. Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown has Mill Creek Park, legitimately one of the best urban parks in America. Talk about hiking, gardens, events, you name it. But if you're not an outdoor person, there are bars, local breweries, and the Youngstown Playhouse doing real theater. You're also an hour from both Cleveland and Pittsburgh if you need pro sports or major concerts. However, this is a post-steel city, which means the mills have been gone for decades. The economy never rebuilt, elevating unemployment and poverty. On top of that, there's crime, particularly in urban areas. The nightlife here is also limited, and the winters are harsh. There's a sense of a small town that can't quite figure out how to reinvent itself. That said, Youngstown isn't falling apart in real time. It's just dealing with the long-term aftermath of industrial collapse. So home prices averaging around $67,000 are affordable to the point of sustainability. The question is whether the community is stabilizing or continuing to decline. Now that we've made it to our top 5, I suggest you pay attention because we're inching closer to our $29,000 average home price. But before we get to that, we have to see a suburb nobody wants to be the suburb of. Number 5. East Cleveland, Ohio. East Cleveland is what happens when a major city's problems spill over into the neighborhood next door. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Lake Erie, and museums are all accessible without the downtown prices. The community is diverse. There are parks, and public transit connects you to Cleveland jobs and events. However, here's what you need to understand. East Cleveland has some of the highest crime rates in Ohio. This isn't a bad neighborhood within a good city situation. This is a city that's experienced severe economic decline and concentrated poverty, forcing youth to turn to crime. However, that $63,000 median home price is too tempting. Still, if you buy here, you're not buying into a thriving suburb. You're buying into a place that's genuinely struggling with violence, poverty, and disinvestment. But our next city is defined not just by industrial collapse, but by a water crisis that won't go away. Number 4. Flint, Michigan. Flint can't be discussed without acknowledging the water crisis. The lead exposure in older homes. That's still an active concern for people buying property here. The violent crime rate is high, as is poverty and unemployment. However, Flint has the Flint Institute of Arts, the second largest art museum in Michigan. There's cultural infrastructure you wouldn't expect in a place like this. In addition to that, the proximity to Detroit means you can catch all the sports events without traveling too far. Still, infrastructure is poor. There are rundown areas, and grocery stores are limited. The stigma of the water crisis is real, and it affects property value and community confidence. That $63,000 median home price is cheap for a reason. The cultural amenities are real, but they exist against a backdrop of genuine systemic struggle. For our next city, we're entering territory where the price is so low, it stops being a deal and starts being a question. What happened here? Number 3. Pritchard, Alabama. Pritchard is a suburb of Mobile. You're close to Gulf Coast beaches and Mardi Gras festivals. And the cost of living is genuinely low. It's the most affordable path to beach access in the Gulf region. However, Pritchard has very high crime rates with robbery and violence. It's genuinely unsafe in ways that matter. Poverty is severe. Unemployment is severe. The city has a history of economic mismanagement and bankruptcy. Infrastructure, like water and sewer systems, is poor. Suddenly, a $52,000 median home price doesn't feel like a steal, but a reflection of a community in active crisis. If you're buying here, you're buying into genuine hardship, not just affordability. Speaking of affordability, you can buy a house in our next city for the price of a used truck. Number 2. East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis is $38,000. Yeah, that's actually real. And you get affordable access to St. Louis, the Gateway Arch, and Cardinals games across the river. There are cultural events highlighting African American history and resilience. The Mississippi River is there, and there's good community spirit. But East St. Louis is also one of the most dangerous cities in America. The crime rate is extreme, not a local problem, a national top 10 problem. Poverty is high, unemployment is catastrophic, and urban decay is visible. Schools aren't functioning, the infrastructure is failing, and there are entire blocks of abandoned buildings. That $38,000 median home price exists because the city is genuinely in crisis. If you're buying here, you're not speculating on revitalization. You're investing in a community that would need massive intervention to stabilize. And here we are, the bottom, $29,000. That's where we end up when everything has been tried, failed, and then tried again. Number 1. Cairo, Illinois. Cairo is $29,000. You can literally own a home here for the cost of a semester of college. The city is at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. That's genuinely unique scenery. Fort Defiance Park is real. There are Civil War historical sites. Shawnee National Forest is nearby for hiking. It's a rural-urban blend with parks and community events. The price is real because the city has experienced a genuine collapse. Severe poverty and unemployment. The economy didn't just decline. It collapsed from flooding and industrial loss. There's high crime and violence. The infrastructure is failing, frequent flooding, and services are poor. The community has been abandoned by investment and people. That $29,000 median home price doesn't make Cairo a bargain. It makes it a documentation of what happens when a community loses its economic foundation and can't rebuild. So yeah, you can absolutely buy a home in America for $29,000. But affordable housing exists in a context. When prices are this low, it's not because the realtor is running a charity, it's because the community is struggling with crime, poverty, unemployment, or all three. Sometimes the community is actively revitalizing, and you're buying at the bottom of something real. Sometimes the community is in genuine freefall. The question isn't, can I afford this? The question is, why is it this affordable? And what am I actually buying into? These communities have people, real people trying to live real lives. Some are thriving, some are struggling, some are fighting to rebuild, some are waiting for someone to fight for them. If you're buying, buy with eyes open. Buy because you genuinely want to invest in a community, not just because the price tag makes sense on a spreadsheet. That's when affordability becomes opportunity instead of just a number. But if you're retiring and just want an affordable, peaceful, and quiet city to move to, don't worry, I've got you covered. Click on the next video to see the 15 US cities practically begging Americans to retire there.